My son was born with a severe disability doctors said would kill him by age 5. He's 16 now. Last week, he saved his bully from drowning. The bully's parents want to thank him, but don't know my son was the R**tard their son tortured for years. Daniel came into this world fighting. I'd had a perfect pregnancy, no complications, no warning signs, just a healthy, normal pregnancy with a baby boy who kicked and moved and seemed eager to meet us. But during delivery, everything went wrong. His heart rate dropped. The cord was wrapped around his neck. The doctors rushed me into an emergency C-section, but by the time they got him out, he'd been without oxygen for too long. I remember the silence. That terrible, awful silence when they pulled him out and he didn't cry. The doctors and nurses swarming around this tiny, blue baby, trying desperately to get him to breathe. My husband Marcus standing beside me, his hand crushing mine, both of us frozen in terror. And then finally, that weak, struggling cry that meant he was alive. But the damage had been done. The neurologist came to see us when Daniel was 2 days old. He had scans, test results, a clipboard full of bad news. He sat down beside my hospital bed where I was holding my baby, this perfect, tiny baby who I'd already fallen completely in love with, and he said, "Your son has severe cerebral palsy. The oxygen deprivation caused significant brain damage. He'll likely never walk, never talk, never understand language. His cognitive abilities will be severely limited, and given the extent of the damage, he probably won't survive past age 5. I looked down at Daniel, sleeping peacefully in my arms, and I felt something inside me harden into steel. "You're wrong," I said. The doctor gave me this pitying look. "I understand this is difficult to accept, but you need to prepare yourselves. There are facilities that specialize in caring for children with his level of disability. It might be best." "We're not putting our son in a facility," Marcus interrupted, his voice tight with barely controlled anger. "He's coming home with us." The doctor sighed. "The level of care he'll need will be overwhelming. Round-the-clock attention, constant medical interventions, therapies that may not even help. You need to think about your quality of life, your marriage, any future children you might want. Sometimes the kindest thing is to let professionals handle." "He's our son," I said, holding Daniel tighter. "We'll handle it." And we did. Those early years were a war. A war against the medical system that wanted to write Daniel off as a lost cause. A war against insurance companies that denied every therapy and treatment we requested. A war against Daniel's own body that refused to cooperate with what his brilliant mind wanted to do. We did physical therapy, 5 times a week, every week for years. We did occupational therapy, speech therapy, aquatic therapy, hippotherapy. We did surgeries to help his muscle tone, to give his legs more stability, to reduce the pain. We fought with school districts and government agencies and doctors who kept telling us we were wasting our time, that Daniel would never improve, that we should accept his limitations. But Daniel had other plans. He started defying their predictions almost immediately. At age 3, when he was supposed to show no cognitive awareness, he looked directly at me when I called his name. At age 4, when he was supposed to be approaching his predicted death, he reached for a toy he wanted, showing clear intentionality and desire. At age 5, the year he was supposed to die, he took his first step with the help of leg braces and a walker. By age 7, he was walking independently with braces. His gait was awkward, his balance precarious, but he was walking. The doctors who'd said it was impossible stood there watching him move across the room and said, "Well, I've never seen anything like this." He couldn't speak. His mouth and throat muscles were too affected by the cerebral palsy, but he understood everything. We discovered this when he was 6 during a comprehensive evaluation. The psychologist would ask him questions, point to the blue circle, show me which picture has a dog, and he'd answer correctly every single time. His IQ tests came back in the normal range. This boy who doctors said would never understand language was cognitively intact. His intelligence was trapped in a body that wouldn't cooperate, so we got him a communication device. One of those tablets with special software that lets him type out messages that the computer reads aloud. And suddenly, Daniel had a voice. And what a voice it was. He was funny. Sarcastic, even. He'd type jokes, make observations about people that were uncomfortably accurate, tease his dad about his terrible taste in music. "You're not broken," I told him once when he was frustrated about his body not doing what he wanted. "You're just different." He typed back, "Different is just another word for broken that makes people feel better about staring." He was 8 years old, 8, and already more emotionally intelligent than most adults. The battle for mainstream education started when Daniel was 10. The school district insisted he belonged in a specialized program 40 miles away, a school specifically for children with severe disabilities. They said he'd be more comfortable there, more accepted, that the mainstream school wasn't equipped to handle his needs. I said, he deserves to be in his community school, around typical peers, learning the same curriculum, having a normal childhood experience. The district disagreed. So began months of IEP meetings, consultations with lawyers, meetings with advocacy groups. I became an expert in special education law. I learned every regulation, every right Daniel had, every accommodation the school was legally required to provide. And I fought. God, I fought so hard. We finally won. Daniel was placed in our neighborhood middle school with a full-time aide, a modified schedule, and a list of accommodations longer than most kids' Christmas wish lists. The school made it clear they weren't happy about it, but legally, they had to comply. The first day of 6th grade, I walked Daniel into that building and felt every eye on us. Parents pulling their kids a little closer, teachers whispering to each other, the principal greeting us with a forced smile that didn't reach his eyes. Daniel's aide, a kind woman named Mrs. Chen, met us in the office, and I could see the pity in her expression as she looked at my son. Daniel noticed too. That night, he typed to me, "They think I'm broken. They think I shouldn't be there." "You have every right to be there," I told him. "Don't let anyone make you feel otherwise." But I was naive. I thought acceptance would come with time, that once people got to know Daniel, they'd see past the disability to the incredible person underneath. I didn't account for Connor Morrison. Connor was everything Daniel wasn't: star athlete, good student, popular. Came from one of those families that donated money to the school, sat on PTA boards, had their name on a plaque in the gymnasium. Everyone loved Connor. Teachers praised him. Other students wanted to be him or be friends with him. He was golden, and he made Daniel's life hell. It started subtle. 6th grade, in the hallways between classes, Connor would mimic Daniel's walking, the jerky, uncoordinated movements that Daniel couldn't control. His friends would laugh. Other students would notice and snicker. Daniel would keep walking, his face burning with humiliation, pretending he didn't see. In class, Connor would make jokes. Special jokes, said just loud enough for people nearby to hear but not loud enough for the teacher to catch. When Daniel used his communication device, Connor would whisper "beep boop, robot boy" to his friends. When Daniel's hand would spasm involuntarily and knock something off his desk, Connor would jump back dramatically and say, "Whoa, careful, dangerous." I found out about it 3 months into the school year when Daniel came home and immediately went to his room. Usually, he'd tell me about his day, type out stories about what he learned or funny things that happened. But that day, silence. I knocked on his door. "Can I come in?" He nodded, not looking at me, staring at his tablet. "How was school?" He typed for a long moment, then showed me the screen. "Connor calls me the R word every day. Everyone laughs. I pretend I don't hear." My heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. "Daniel, we need to report this. That's not okay. That's bullying and it's not acceptable. It won't help. He's popular, I'm not. No one will believe me. I believe you, and the school has to take this seriously." But Daniel was right. The school didn't take it seriously. I met with the principal, Mr. Reynolds, the next day, brought Daniel with me so he could share what was happening. Reynolds listened with a patient expression that made my skin crawl. "Boys will be boys," he said when Daniel finished typing out his experiences. "Middle school is rough for everyone. Connor's a good kid. I'm sure he doesn't mean anything by it. Sometimes kids tease each other and it's just kids being kids." "He calls my son the R word," I said, struggling to keep my voice level. "He mocks his disability. That's not teasing, that's bullying, and it's creating a hostile environment." Reynolds sighed. "Mrs. Palmer, I understand you're protective of Daniel. But we have to be careful about making accusations against students like Connor. His family is very involved in this school. His father donates significant money to our programs. Before we go accusing their son of bullying, we need concrete evidence. My son's testimony isn't evidence. It's one person's word against another's. And Daniel? Well, Daniel sometimes has difficulty interpreting social situations, doesn't he? Maybe Connor's intentions are being misunderstood." I wanted to scream. Instead, I said very calmly, "My son understands social situations perfectly. He's cognitively intact. And he knows the difference between friendly teasing and targeted harassment. I'll talk to Connor," Reynolds said, in a tone that suggested the conversation was over. "I'm sure this is just a misunderstanding." He talked to Connor. Connor, with his golden smile and his respectable family, denied everything. Said he and Daniel were friends, that he was just trying to make him feel included, that he'd never say anything mean. And Reynolds believed him. The bullying got worse. It escalated from verbal to physical. Connor would accidentally bump into Daniel in the hallways, sending him stumbling. He'd knock Daniel's communication device off his desk, apologizing profusely while his friends smirked. He'd trip Daniel during passing periods, then help him up with this concerned expression, playing the hero while secretly being the villain. And the social media posts started. Someone, Daniel was sure it was Connor, would record him during difficult moments. When he had a meltdown because the sensory overload of the cafeteria got to be too much. When his hand spasmed and he spilled food on himself. When he struggled to communicate something and got frustrated. Those moments, private and vulnerable, ended up on Instagram and Snapchat with cruel captions. Watch the special kid freak out. This is what happens when you mainstream the r*tards. I reported every single incident. Went to the school with screenshots, with witnesses, with my son's testimony. And every single time, I hit a wall. Connor was the victim of misunderstandings. His social media accounts must have been hacked. He was just trying to help Daniel fit in. Other parents took Connor's side. My son would never do something like that. I think Daniel is misinterpreting friendly gestures. Maybe he'd be happier at the special school where he'd be more comfortable. Even the police wouldn't help. I filed a report about the online harassment. The officer looked at the posts, looked at me with sympathy and said, "This is terrible, but it's a school matter. We don't really have jurisdiction over social media bullying between students. You need to work with the administration." The administration that was protecting Connor because his father sat on the PTA board and had his name on a plaque. Daniel's mental health started to crumble. This strong, resilient boy who'd fought his way back from death, who defied every medical prediction, who'd never let his disability define him, he started typing messages that terrified me. I wish I was never born. Everyone would be happier if I died like the doctor said I would. I'm a burden, I ruin everything. I held him while he cried, this 16-year-old boy sobbing in my arms because other kids were so cruel, and I felt helpless, completely, utterly helpless. I'd fought the medical system for him, I'd fought the education system for him. But I couldn't fight an entire school culture that had decided my son didn't belong. Then came the incident that broke us completely. It was a Tuesday in February. Daniel was in the hallway between classes, walking to his next period. The hallway was empty, most kids were already in their classrooms. Connor appeared behind him at the top of the stairwell. There were no cameras in that particular hallway, no witnesses. Connor said, "Why don't you just die already?" Then he pushed. Daniel fell down 12 stairs. Broke his arm in 2 places. Got a concussion. Ended up in the hospital where the doctors who'd predicted his death 16 years ago now had to piece him back together after another kid tried to make their prediction come true. Connor claimed Daniel fell on his own. He just lost his balance, Connor told the school administration with wide, innocent eyes. You know how he is with his disability. I tried to catch him, but I couldn't reach him in time. It was an accident. No witnesses, no cameras, just Connor's word against Daniel's. And the school believed Connor. Daniel typed out what really happened from his hospital bed. He told me to die, then he pushed me. I didn't fall. He pushed me. But there was no proof. And Connor's family, wealthy and connected, made it clear they'd sue for defamation if we kept insisting their son had done something wrong. I pulled Daniel out of school that day, called the district, and said we'd be homeschooling, withdrew him completely. I couldn't send my son back to a place that had failed to protect him so catastrophically. Marcus and I fought about it. We should sue, he kept saying. We should go public. We should make them pay for what they let happen. But I was exhausted, bone-deep exhausted. And Daniel, typing from his hospital bed with one arm in a cast, said, I just want it to stop. Please, Mom, I just want it all to stop. So we stopped fighting the school, started homeschooling. Daniel was isolated from peers, which broke my heart, but he was safe. He made academic progress, worked through curriculum at his own pace, didn't have to endure daily torture from his classmates. But he was lonely, so lonely. And I watched my vibrant, funny, brilliant son become quieter, more withdrawn, more convinced that he didn't deserve to exist in spaces with normal kids. For 2 years, we lived like that. Daniel at home, working through middle school curriculum, having no social life beyond me and his dad and his therapists. I tried to find social opportunities for him, adaptive sports programs, disability support groups, but Daniel wasn't interested. He'd been burned too badly. Then, the summer before he turned 16, Daniel asked to go back. He'd been working with a new physical therapist, someone younger and more aggressive about pushing his limits. Daniel had gotten stronger. His walking was more stable. He could go longer distances without his braces now, though he still used them for safety. He looked different, taller, broader through the shoulders, more confident in his body. And one night at dinner, he typed out a message that stunned both of us. "I want to go back to school." "Real school, for high school." "Daniel, are you sure?" I asked carefully. "You've been doing so well with homeschooling, you don't have to." "I won't let Connor win," he typed. "He doesn't get to steal my education, my social life, my chance to be normal." "I want to try again." Marcus and I exchanged glances. "The school has a new principal," Marcus said. "Maybe things would be different." "Connor will still be there," I pointed out. "He's going to be a junior, football team captain, even more popular than before." "I know," Daniel typed, "but I'm stronger now, and I'm not giving up." So we enrolled him for his sophomore year, met with the new principal, Mrs. Davidson, who seemed genuinely committed to making the school inclusive and safe. She promised close monitoring, zero tolerance for bullying, regular check-ins with Daniel to make sure he was okay. The first day back, I walked Daniel to the entrance and watched him head in with his aide. And I prayed. Actually prayed, something I hadn't done since the day he was born. "Please let this be different. Please let him be safe. Please don't let them break him again." That afternoon, Daniel came home and immediately typed. Connor saw me, smirked, made a gesture like he was going to trip me. His friends laughed. It's like I never left. My heart sank. "Do you want to come back home? We can go back to homeschooling." "No," he typed firmly. "I'm not giving up. He wants me to hide. I won't." And he didn't. Every day, Daniel went to school and endured Connor's presence. The principal kept her promise about monitoring, so Connor couldn't do anything too overt. But the smirks continued. The whispers. The way Connor's friends would move away when Daniel approached, like his disability was contagious. The subtle, cruel reminders that Daniel didn't belong in their world. And then came the field trip that changed everything. It was a Friday in May. The biology class was doing an environmental study at Lake Meridian, about 45 minutes from school. It was optional, but Daniel wanted to go. Wanted to participate in normal school activities, be part of the class experience. Mrs. Chen, his aide, came along to support him. The lake was beautiful that day. Sunny, warm, perfect weather for the outdoor work. Students spread out along the shoreline, testing water samples, documenting plant life, working in groups on their projects. Daniel joined a group with some girls from his class who'd always been kind to him, and I felt hopeful that maybe this could be a good day. Connor and his friends were there too, of course. Being loud, showing off, largely ignoring the educational purpose of the trip. I later found out they'd brought alcohol, vodka in water bottles, and had been drinking while the teachers were distracted with other students. The swimming area was clearly marked with buoys and signs. Teachers had warned everyone multiple times. No swimming, the currents were unpredictable, stay away from the rocks. But Connor, drunk and showing off for his friends, decided the rules didn't apply to him. "Watch this." He yelled, and before anyone could stop him, he climbed up on the rocks and dove off. He hit his head on a submerged rock on the way down, went under the water unconscious. His friends started screaming, panicking, not knowing what to do. Daniel saw it happen. Was maybe 50 feet away, working with his group. And without hesitation, without thinking about his own safety or his limited swimming ability, he ran toward the water. Mrs. Chen tried to stop him. "Daniel, no, you can't swim well enough. Wait for the teachers." But Daniel was already in the water, moving with that awkward, uncoordinated motion that characterized everything his body did. But moving, swimming toward where Connor had gone under. The next part, I only know from the people who witnessed it. Daniel somehow reached Connor. Somehow managed to flip him face up, get his head above water, start dragging him toward shore. It should have been impossible. Daniel's not a strong swimmer. His cerebral palsy affects his coordination, his muscle control, his ability to do precisely the kind of complex physical movements that swimming requires. But he did it. Slowly, agonizingly, Daniel dragged Connor's unconscious body through the water while Connor's friends stood on shore screaming and crying and being utterly useless. 2 teachers finally responded, running into the water to help. They pulled both boys onto shore, Connor unconscious, water streaming from his mouth. Daniel exhausted, his whole body shaking from the effort, barely able to hold himself up. EMTs arrived within minutes. Got Connor breathing again, rushed him to the hospital where they determined he had a concussion and minor water in his lungs, but he'd live. He'd live because my son, the boy he'd tormented for years, had jumped into dangerous water and saved him. Mrs. Chen was sobbing when she called me. I don't know how he did it. He's not a strong swimmer. The physical therapist said he should never swim alone. But he did it anyway. He saved that boy's life. I raced to the hospital where they'd taken both boys, found Daniel in an examination room, wrapped in blankets, Mrs. Chen beside him. He looked up at me when I came in, and I saw something in his eyes I hadn't seen in years. Pride. He typed slowly, his hands still shaking. Couldn't let him die. Doesn't matter what he did to me. I couldn't just watch him drown. I held my son while I cried. This beautiful, extraordinary boy who'd been told he'd die at 5, who'd survived medical predictions and cruel bullying and society's complete failure to see his value. He'd just saved the life of someone who tried to destroy him. The story hit local news within hours. Teen with cerebral palsy heroically rescues classmate from drowning. Daniel became a minor celebrity overnight. The school district issued a statement praising his bravery. The community was inspired by this disabled boy who'd risked his life to save another student. And Connor's family, the Morrisons, wanted to meet him, wanted to thank the hero who'd saved their son. The irony would have been funny if it wasn't so painful. They'd seen the news coverage, saw a disabled teen named Daniel Palmer who'd rescued a student from their son's school. But they didn't make the connection. They'd never bothered to learn my son's name during all those years Connor was tormenting him. The school arranged a meeting. The Morrisons showed up with flowers, a gift basket, tears of gratitude. Connor was still in the hospital, recovering from his concussion, so it was just his parents, the principal, me, and Daniel. Mrs. Morrison hugged me before I could stop her. Thank you so much. Your son saved our boy's life. We can never repay that kind of heroism. Mr. Morrison was crying openly. When we got the call that Connor had gone under, we thought we'd lost him, and then they told us another student pulled him out. A student with a disability who risked everything. Your son is a hero, an absolute hero. Daniel sat beside me, typing something on his device. He showed it to me quietly. Let them just say thank you. I don't want drama. But I couldn't do it. Couldn't let them stand there praising my son while being completely oblivious to who their son really was. Who they'd raised him to be. Does Connor talk to you about school? I asked carefully. Oh, all the time, Mrs. Morrison beamed. He loves it. He's team captain this year, such a leader. Has he ever mentioned having a classmate with cerebral palsy? She paused, her smile flickering. I don't think so. Why? Daniel and I exchanged glances. He nodded slightly. Permission. I pulled out my phone, opened the folder of screenshots I'd saved from years ago. Connor's social media posts mocking Daniel. Photos of Daniel during meltdowns with cruel captions. Videos of Connor mimicking Daniel's walk while his friends laughed. Your son has known Daniel for 6 years, I said quietly, handing Mr. Morrison my phone. He's been systematically bullying him since 6th grade, the R word your son uses constantly. That's what he calls my son, every day, for years. The color drained from Mrs. Morrison's face as she looked at the screen. Her hand came up to her mouth. No, Connor wouldn't. He's a good kid, He pushed Daniel down a flight of stairs 2 years ago, I continued, my voice level despite the rage simmering underneath. Broke his arm, gave him a concussion, told him to die first. That's why we pulled Daniel out of school. That's why he's been homeschooled until this year. Mr. Morrison was scrolling through the screenshots, his face getting redder with each image. These are from Connor's account? Yes. And this boy, He looked up at Daniel, really looked at him for the first time, saw the communication device. The leg braces, the physical manifestation of a disability his son had mocked for years. Oh my God. Mrs. Morrison was crying now. The boy Connor's been, the one in these posts. That's Daniel, that's your son? That's my son. The one who saved Connor's life despite everything your son did to him. The room went silent except for Mrs. Morrison's quiet crying. Principal Davidson looked devastated. The Morrisons looked like they'd been hit by a truck. Finally, Mr. Morrison spoke, his voice hoarse. We didn't know. We had no idea Connor was doing this. Did you ask? I countered. Did you ever ask your son about his classmates with disabilities? Did you ever talk to him about inclusion, about kindness, about treating everyone with dignity? He had no answer for that. Daniel typed something and turned his device toward the Morrisons. I forgive Connor, but he needs to change, and you need to know who your son really is. Mrs. Morrison read the message and broke down completely. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Connor will apologize. He'll make this right. We'll make sure I don't want your apologies, Daniel typed. I want him to stop being cruel, to me and to everyone else he thinks is less than him. The meeting ended shortly after that. The Morrisons left with their flowers and gift basket, their gratitude now mixed with horror and shame. Principal Davidson promised a full investigation into the bullying culture that had allowed this to continue. And I drove Daniel home, both of us quiet, processing what had just happened. Did I do the right thing? I asked him. Telling them? He thought for a moment, then typed, they needed to know. How can Connor change if no one tells his parents what he's really like? That night, Connor's parents confronted him in his hospital room. I heard about it later from Mrs. Morrison, who called me crying. They'd shown him the screenshots, confronted him with years of evidence of his cruelty. And Connor, faced with undeniable proof, finally broke down. He's so weird, Connor had said at first, still defensive. He makes these noises. He walks funny, it was just jokes. Jokes? His mother had responded. You told him to die, you pushed him downstairs, you posted videos mocking him online. Those aren't jokes, that's torture. And something in Connor finally cracked. He admitted it, all of it. The years of bullying. The systematic campaign to make Daniel's life miserable. The way he'd convinced himself it was okay because Daniel was different, because other kids laughed, because no one stopped him. This boy you tortured saved your life, his father had said. Do you understand that? You tried to destroy him, and he risked his life to save yours. Connor came to see Daniel a week later, supervised by his parents, by Mrs. Davidson, by a counselor the school had assigned. He walked into our living room looking smaller somehow, his confidence stripped away, his eyes red from crying. I'm sorry, he said, his voice breaking. I'm so sorry for everything. I was cruel and awful and there's no excuse. You saved my life, and I was a monster to you. Daniel listened, his face impassive. Then he typed, why did you do it? Connor sat down heavily on our couch, his parents standing behind him. I was scared, he admitted. You were different, and I didn't know how to handle different. So I made fun of it, and everyone laughed, and it made me feel powerful, I guess. And then it became easier to keep being cruel than to admit I was wrong. What you did hurt me every single day, Daniel typed. You made me hate myself. Made me wish I'd died when I was 5, like the doctors said I would. Connor was crying now, openly. I know, and I'm so sorry. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just need you to know that I'm going to change. I'm going to be better. I'm going to make sure no one else ever feels the way I made you feel. Daniel stared at him for a long moment, then typed, I forgive you, but forgiveness doesn't mean what you did was okay. It means I'm not going to let your cruelty define my life anymore. Connor nodded, wiping his eyes. Can I do anything to make this better? Change, Daniel typed simply. Be better, and if you see someone being bullied, stop it. You have power at school. Use it for good instead of evil. That conversation was the beginning of something I never expected. Connor's transformation was gradual but real. He started therapy to work through his own insecurities and cruelty. He approached Daniel at school a few months later, cautiously, respectfully, and asked if he could sit with him at lunch. Daniel agreed, warily at first, but Connor kept showing up, kept being genuine. Started using his popularity to shut down ableist jokes, to call out kids who mocked students with disabilities, to change the culture that had enabled his bullying in the first place. He started volunteering with Special Olympics, found purpose in supporting people with disabilities instead of tearing them down. And he told anyone who would listen about Daniel, about his courage, his grace, his humanity. I was so scared of being like him, Connor told me once, months into his transformation. His disability terrified me because I thought it meant he was less than me. But he's stronger than I'll ever be. He has more courage, more compassion, more real strength than I ever had when I was being cruel. I tried to destroy him, and he saved me anyway. He taught me what it means to be a good person. Daniel and Connor never became best friends. The history between them was too painful for that, but they became something, allies maybe. Connor advocated for disability rights at school. Daniel cautiously accepted that people could change, could grow, could learn from their cruelty and become better. The school district launched a comprehensive investigation into the bullying culture and implemented new policies, anti-bullying programs, disability awareness training, clear consequences for students who targeted their peers. The administrators who'd enabled Connor's behavior for years were formally reprimanded. It didn't undo the damage, but it was something. And then came graduation. Connor was chosen as the graduation speaker. Everyone expected the typical speech about following dreams and staying in touch and good times had by all. Instead, Connor walked up to that podium in front of the entire senior class, all their families, all the teachers and administrators who'd looked the other way for years, and he told the truth. I was a bully, he began, his voice steady despite the shock rippling through the audience. For years, I systematically tormented a classmate because his disability made me uncomfortable. I mocked him. I physically hurt him. I tried to destroy his spirit because I was scared and insecure and cruel. I heard gasps. Saw people looking around, trying to figure out who he was talking about. Daniel sat beside me in the audience, his face unreadable. Connor continued. Last year, I almost died. I did something stupid and dangerous, and I went under the water unconscious. And the classmate I'd tortured for years dove in and saved me. He risked his life for mine, even though I'd spent years trying to make him wish he'd never been born. Now people were really reacting. Whispers, shocked faces, some people crying. Daniel Palmer taught me more about courage, grace, and humanity than anyone else in this room, Connor said, his voice breaking. He showed mercy I didn't deserve. He chose compassion when he could have chosen revenge, and he did it because that's who he is. He's stronger and braver and more genuinely good than I ever was. Connor looked directly at Daniel. Thank you for saving my life, and thank you for showing me what it means to be a good person. I don't deserve your forgiveness, but you gave it anyway. That's the most important thing I learned in high school, not from textbooks or teachers, but from you. The standing ovation was immediate, thunderous. Daniel was crying, typing something on his device. He turned it toward me. Forgiveness is freedom, for both of us. That was 5 years ago. Daniel is 21 now. He graduated high school with honors, got accepted to State University with full accommodations, and is studying disability advocacy. He wants to change the policies and systems that failed him. Wants to make sure other kids with disabilities don't have to fight the way he did just to be treated with basic dignity. Connor became a special education teacher, works with kids like Daniel every day. Uses his own story of transformation to teach students about empathy, inclusion, and the damage that cruelty causes. They stay in touch. Connor sends Daniel updates about students he's helping, asking for advice, thanking him again and again for the second chance at being a good person. The school where it all happened has become a model for inclusion. They have robust anti-bullying programs, disability awareness training, peer mentorship systems. Daniel goes back sometimes to speak to students about his experience, about resilience, about choosing compassion even when the world is cruel to you. And me. I look at my son, this young man who was supposed to die at 5, who defied every medical prediction, who survived not just his disability but the cruelty of a world that didn't want to make space for him, and I am overwhelmed with pride. He's changing the world. Not by being inspirational, in that patronizing way people often mean when they talk about people with disabilities, but by showing what's possible when we choose to see people instead of disabilities, when we choose compassion over cruelty, when we recognize that the kids society deems less than often have the biggest hearts of all. My son was supposed to die at 5. At 21, he's not just alive, he's thriving, he's making the world better just by being in it. And every person who ever doubted him, every doctor who wrote him off, every bully who tried to break him, they were all wrong. Daniel Palmer wasn't a tragedy. He was never broken. He was never less than. He was extraordinary all along. And it took the world 16 years and one drowning rescue to finally see it. But he always knew. Even when everyone else treated him like he was worthless, Daniel knew his own value. And he never let their cruelty make him cruel in return. That's the real miracle. Not that he survived, but that he stayed kind. If this story touched you, I need you to do something for me. Drop a comment and tell me about someone in your life who defied expectations, who showed you what real strength looks like, who chose kindness when the world gave them every reason to be bitter. Because these stories matter. These people matter. And if you've got your own Daniel in your life, they deserve to be celebrated. Hit that like button if this made you cry or think or feel literally anything. And subscribe because I share real stories like this. Stories about the humans we overlook, the courage we don't recognize, the quiet heroes who change lives just by refusing to give up. Thanks for being here with us today. Until next time.